filthy swines! Get in here, sit down, behave yourselves. We're going to read some stuff. If you like it, stick around. If you don't, well, you could always bog off. It's up to you. Anyway, kind of feels like we are in another Cold War. If you're old enough, you'll remember the Cold War between NATO and the Soviet Union. Nowadays, the modern Cold War, I would argue, is centered around AI and who's going to become the market leader in effectively stealing the crown of superintelligence or AGI. And I think so far what we've been seeing has been pretty encouraging. There are a number of other companies who are competing on a relative level playing field, which is encouraging. I'd rather see a world where we have multiple companies competing and kind of staying relatively in line and researching together and stuff than one shoot to the fore and become a monopoly, because we don't like monopolies really. Anyway, this is an issue that is global now. It's not just between companies within the States. There are other companies in China as well. I don't know if Europe is doing that much, but perhaps they are. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right direction. Anyway, this article on Wired, written by Zil Knight Zaya Zhang Business. They're quite some names, aren't they? Well done. AI research is getting harder to separate from geopolitics. I think this is an issue that is forcing the requirement for new global legislation to deal with this kind of thing, which is why there's this big push for globalism in general. So globalism in another way is another thing that is very difficult to imagine not accumulating, but in what form? That's the question. A policy change announced by Neura IPs, the world's leading AI research conference, drew widespread backlash from Chinese researchers this week and then was quickly reversed. Oh no, what the heck? The world's top AI research conference, the Conference on Neural Information Processing Systems, better known as NeurIPS, we all know that one, became the latest organization this week to become embroiled in a growing clash between geopolitics and global scientific collaboration. The conference's organizers announced and then quickly reversed controversial new restrictions for international participants after Chinese AI researchers threatened to boycott the event. This is a potential watershed moment, says Paul Triolo, a partner at the advisory firm DGA Albright Stonebridge, who studies US-China relations. Triolo argues that attracting Chinese researchers to Neura IPs, is it Neural PS? To Neural PS is beneficial to the US interests. But some American officials have pushed for American and Chinese scientists to decouple their work, especially in AI, which has become a particularly sensitive topic in Washington. I suppose a lot of these advancements could also have military applications, and also military applications that are hard to foresee. So that's the problem that we're all wading into. It's not just that you could install a AI in a drone to do XYZ that might be dangerous to a competitor. That AI could be used to breach security in various corporations, steal information, blah, blah, blah. I think there was chatter last week about a new version of Claude released called Mythic, I think it is, that has serious security concerns. Apparently it's very good. They always say they're very good, and they tend to be quite good. So I don't know. Maybe this is one of the reasons why there's this desire for decoupling, because some of the consequences might actually be quite broad. The incident could deepen political tensions around AI research as well as dissuade Chinese scientists from working at US universities and tech companies in the future. At some level now, it is going to be hard to keep basic AI research out of the political picture, Triolo says. In its annual handbook for paper submissions issued in mid-March, Neural PS organizers announced updated restrictions for participation. The rules stated that the event could not provide services including peer review, editing, and publishing to any organization subject to US sanctions, linked to a database of sanctioned entities. It included companies and organizations on the Bureau of Industry and Securities Entity List, and those on another list with alleged ties to the Chinese military. The new rules would have affected researchers at Chinese companies like Tencent and Huawei, who regularly present work to Neural. How am I reading this? Is NeurIPS? I'm going to say NeurIPS from now on. Present work at NeurIPS. The database also includes entities from other countries such as Russia and Iran. The US places limits on doing business with these organizations, but there are no rules around academic publishing or conference participation. The NeurIPS handbook has since been updated to specify that the restrictions apply only to specifically designated nationals and blocked persons. A list used primarily for terrorist groups and criminal organizations. Blimey. In preparation for NURIP's 2026 handbook, we included a link to a US government sanctions tool that covers a significantly broader set of restrictions than those NURIPs is currently required to follow. The event's organizers said in a statement issued Friday, this error was due to miscommunication between NURIP's foundation and our legal team. Before they reversed course, the conference organizers initially said that the new rule was about legal requirements that apply to the NURIP's foundation, which is responsible for complying with sanctions, adding that it was seeking legal consultation on the issue. The new rule drew swift backlash from AI researchers around the world, particularly in China, which produces a large quantity of cutting-edge machine learning papers and is home to a growing share of the world's top AI talent. Several academic groups there issued statements condemning the measure and, more importantly, discouraging Chinese academics from attending NURIPs in the future. Some urged Chinese academics to contribute instead to domestic research conferences, potentially helping increase the country's influence in relevant science and tech fields. So China's been pushed out of conferences that are dominated by US companies. Perhaps because those US companies are also being granted contracts with US and European intelligence agencies and military, perhaps, and there are disagreements in certain global things, Iran being one of them at the moment. The China Association of Science and Technology, CAST, an influential government-affiliated organization for scientists and engineers, said Thursday that it would stop providing funds for Chinese scholars traveling to attend NURIPs and would use the money instead to support domestic and international conferences that respect the rights of Chinese scholars. CAST also said it would no longer count publications at the 2026 NURIPS conference as academic achievements when evaluating future research funding. It is unclear if the organization will reverse course now that NURIPS has walked back the new rule. At least 6 scholars have publicly said they turned down invitations to serve as area chairs at NURIPS this year due to the sanctions policy. Others said they would decline to participate as paper reviewers. I've served as area chair every year since 2020. Just declined Nan Jiang, a machine learning researcher at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, said in a social media post. At least the organizers owe the community an explanation why they are the only major ML venue adopting such a policy. That's one less area chair responsibility for me. If I hadn't already committed to colleagues, I wouldn't submit a paper this year either, wrote Yassin Abadasi Yadakori, a researcher at the AI firm Sapient Intelligence. The controversy reflects the increasingly fraught political landscape that top researchers, many of whom have been long accustomed to collaborating with international colleagues, now have to navigate. Although progress in AI has often depended on this kind of openness, rising tensions between the US and China in recent years have significantly complicated the picture. Thousands of Chinese scientists take part in NURIPS annually. In 2025, roughly half of the papers presented at the event came from researchers with a Chinese academic background, according to an analysis conducted by The Economist. Tsinghua University, widely considered the top university in China, was listed on 319 NURIPS papers, more than any other institution or company. Researchers from Alibaba also received one of the conference's Best Paper Awards for work related to the company's open source AI model. Was it Owen or Quen? One of the two. A previous Wired analysis shows that despite rising tensions between Washington and Beijing, US and Chinese researchers have largely continued to collaborate on work published at NURIPS. The latest sanctions saga could strain those ties. NURIP's prosperity comes from the joint efforts of researchers worldwide, and its growth and success have long been supported by sponsorship from some of the sanctioned entities too. Yuliang Zhu, an assistant professor in digital graphics at the Westlake University in China, wrote on social media, adding that he also declined an invitation to serve as an area chair at the conference. It is extremely sad to see this split taking place. I've always been amazed, when pursuing science journals, how open all the countries are sharing the fruits of hard work, not just for the advancement and application of science, but for maintaining an amiable and constructive bridge between our countries and thus for peace and progress in the world. scientists unite? Well, this is the gray area between science and engineering, really. A lot of these algorithms and processes that these people are discussing are more engineering based than science. So it's tricky, really, because science in itself is something that you might think is open source, although I'm pretty sure there are some scientific disciplines that are restricted from public view. I mean, you can't go about reading up on how to make a nuclear weapon, and I imagine there are a great many other things that you also cannot find, and if you try and find, we'll get in some trouble. So I think the problem with AI research like this that these people are discussing and collaborating with, a lot of this stuff is becoming so potent now that perhaps there is danger that if there isn't a political agreement on a much broader international framework on how to deal with each other, that we become entrenched in our own tribal blocks. And there's a lot of good stuff comes out of China when it comes to AI and digital software and such. China seems to be a very mixed nation. There are areas of it that seem quite backwards, but then there are other areas that are much more forward thinking, much more akin to the Western world. So it's hard to place an example of China and the US in comparison and say, well, there's a lot of common ground there, because there isn't really. Culturally, I think China is quite varied. This is the problem. We don't see eye to eye. And I'm not sure China sees eye to eye with itself. I think perhaps if I was in China, and I'm not in China, and I was a rural Chinese person, I would probably be thinking very differently to a more urban Chinese person. But I think this is more of a sign of the growing complexity of AI and its potential application in military and intelligence. And a whole load of interesting stuff coming down the pipe, with Anthropic's mythic model perhaps being an example of how our current security is maybe on shaky foundation. If these AIs are going to become so sophisticated that they could potentially crack into people's formerly secure accounts. Anyway, we'll see. I'm not sure we're going to see much hope in this direction, though, with collaboration between nations, if we're grumbling at each other through Iran at the moment, and Ukraine as well. But we'll see. I'm rooting for the US, by the way. It's my favorite country, but I hope China does well too in its own way. And the universe is bloody massive. Have you seen how insanely massive the universe is up there? There's an awful lot of space up there. There's so much. In fact, I don't think there's any need for us to really quarrel. That's just my uneducated opinion. Good luck to you all. But that is it for now. Make sure you hit that like button, share the stream, say kind words, and the only thing I have left to say is Pigwig out.
Oink, oinkity, snort, schnuffle, schnuffle, squee, oink, oink, ree, squeal, snort, snort, oinkity, squee. Oink, oink, oinkity, squee, squee, ree, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squee, oink, 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 ree, 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 oh. Snort, schnuffle, oink, squee, squeal, ree, snort, oinky, oinkity, oink, oink, schnuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal. Oink, oink, oinkity, squee, squee, ree, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squee, oink, 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 ree, 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 oh. Oink, oinkity, snort, schnuffle, schnuffle, squee, oinkity, oink, oink, snuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal. Oink, oink, oinkity, squee, squee, ree, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squee, oink, 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 ree, 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 oh. Squeal, squeal. Snort, shuffle, oink, ree, squeal, ree, snort, oinky, oinkity, oink, 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 snuffle, ree, squee, snort, oink, squeal, oink, oink, oinkity, squee, squee, ree, 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 snuffle, snort, squeal, squeal, oinky, oink, snort, snort, squee, oink, 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 ree, 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 oh. Squeal, squeal, snort, snuffle, oink,